Andy Crocker, welcome to the conversation today.
Thanks, Jonathan. Happy to be here.
It is a real pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Alabama. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about what losing to Musk and Bezos taught you in the aerospace uh, industry about real leadership. You have a super interesting background. I'm going to share your bio here in a minute, but it puts you in a place where you really, are having this direct kind of competition and opportunity to see how you stack up against some of the biggest names out there, literally the richest men in the world,
Right.
huge empires, business empires, and whatnot. And there's good and there's bad associated with that, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, today we're going to unpack that and try to learn more about real leadership and what that really looks like, as you discussed in your book, The Unconditionals. As we get started, I wanted to share Andy's bio with everybody. Andy Crocker is an aerospace executive with 3 decades of experience building high performance teams and leading ambitious projects, including NASA's Human Landing System. He holds degrees in engineering, humanities, management, and leadership, and is an associate fellow of the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics. His multidisciplinary educational background and diverse career shaped his unique perspective that led him to write The Unconditionals, in which he reveals the foundational, timeless values that help readers unlock the potential for their greatest personal and professional fulfillment. He recently founded Overview Affection, a company that aims to extend the values contained in Unconditionals to individuals and organizations. Now, Andy, is there anything you would like to highlight by way of your background before we dive on in?
Sure. I'll just say my background has been in space my whole career. So I've
Yeah.
worked in aerospace for 30 years, right out of college, and always worked in space. A lot of work with NASA, work with commercial space companies and defense space in some cases, but space has been my passion and my career. And like you said in the introduction, has given me great opportunities to work on cool projects and compete at the highest levels. And sometimes you win and sometimes you lose, but
Hmm.
um,
Hmm.
but those things have really played a big part in shaping my understanding of leadership and just values in general.
Yeah, excellent, excellent. Well, what a fascinating industry to be a part of. I only have my passing interest, as an observer. I watch movies and TV shows and read books, and I find it endlessly fascinating. Yet I have no expertise in the area whatsoever. I just rewatched on a flight back from Venice the other day. I just rewatched Interstellar.
Hmm.
Which is one of my favorite movies, and
Right.
is just always gets me excited. And so we have like these aspirational kind of goals attached to space exploration, space travel. And so we have, the history of NASA, but you also have more recently, you have Musk's efforts, and it has changed the game a bit, right? Like now,
Hmm.
now there's private industry involved in a place that you really used to be reserved for nation states. And yeah, I can only imagine all of the things that you've experienced over the last 30 years. As we get started, I wanted to first ask just about the book. Like, whenever I'm sitting down with an author, I just like to know why this book, why now.
Hmm.
Books are labors of love. They take lots of time, energy, effort, oftentimes multiple painful revision rounds, all of that kind of stuff. Where a part of you is in the book. So what was it about this book that really pushed you to write it?
Right. I two major motivations. One was that I always wanted to write down for my kids what I thought was, the most important for them to know. What are the most important things to know about how to live and so forth. And so I kind of, jotted things down throughout my life. But when my son started, he was a senior in high school, started his senior year, and kind of came home and said, "I'm a senior." I went, "Wow, I got to get
Time
on it."
flies.
And that was the same year. And only a few months after I had finished my time working on the human landing system. So
Mm,
that was a project that lasted about 5 years for me. Like you mentioned in the intro, the company I worked for, the team that I led that project for our company, and we competed against Musk's. SpaceX and Bezos's Blue Origin, and we're one of the three companies really in the mix to send humans to the moon. So it was a fantastic project, amazing team, which was full bore, all in for 5 years. And you get to the end of that and think, okay, what's my purpose now? I had this grand
Mm,
purpose. We're going to send people to the moon and hopefully, make that a long forever endeavor where people are
yeah.
always going to the moon and living on and going from the moon. But when you get to the end of that, you say, what do I do now? And part of that for me was, what is purpose? I had this purpose, but was it the right one? And what is purpose in general? So those things really coalesced into, okay, this is what I'm going to write the book about, thinking first about my kids, and then I got about 2 months into it and realized, wait, this is more than that.
Mm,
This is a this is more of a something that I think other people may gain from. And as I really got into it, I learned a lot about what I think is important and why. Really pulling from, I say in the subtitle, timeless values, which means for me, pulling from people who've learned these things over time. It's not just today these are values that are important, but they've
yeah.
always been important. And it's so easy to forget them. It's so easy, we get bogged down in everything that we're doing. We forget that values like these really help us navigate the world that we're in, whatever role we're playing, working on a project as a parent, as a leader. And so that's where the book came from. And I really kind of um, followed where I felt like it should go. And then what really kind of struck me at the end of it was that these values need to be unconditional. And that's why I titled it what I did, the unconditionals, that they have to they have to be lived out no matter what's going on in our lives, independent of who someone is, what we're working on, what we're going to get out of it, what circumstances we're in. These are values that we have to strive to live out in any circumstance. And so that's really where the title came from.
Well, I love it. What a great motivation, for a book. I'm a father of six children myself, and my oldest is 21, youngest is
Mhm.
12, and so I
Okay.
found myself in similar thought experiments about just like what do I hope that I'm passing on to my kids,
Right.
and it when they're in the throes of teenager age, life, that's not always the time they're open to it.
Right. Right.
Shall we say, they're more interested in talking to friends and whatnot, but there will be a time,
Right.
when they're more interested in like what my wife and I, have to say about whatever, and are there things that I've been able to instill in them through example? Are there things I've been able to pass along when they were more receptive, and then in the future when they're receptive again?
Right.
How can I pass that on? And it's something I think a lot about. I think that's a
Right.
wonderful motivation for a book. And like you said, of course, these are timeless, unconditional values. That means they're going to be beneficial to anybody, not just your
Right.
kids.
Right.
And so getting it out there and disseminating it so everyone can benefit, I think is fantastic. Now we've been teasing these values.
Sure.
I also just wanted to say I like how you frame it as unconditional. I like how these are timeless. These are things that we should be striving for, and it can feel like all that gets lost in the noise of life.
Hmm.
Um, Nothing in your book I think is like super groundbreaking.
Right. Right.
It's these are things that we've all heard before. We're going to
Right.
unpack and discuss together.
Hmm.
Same with me. Like I talk about stuff on this podcast or in my books. Like it's not rocket science. Like
Right.
pun intended. Like
Yeah.
like you're doing way more complicated things in your aerospace
Hmm.
career than these principles. Yet it's not rocket science, but it is hard. It's really hard because
Hmm.
we're human and because we're so easily distracted and we're so easily, pulled in different directions and frustrated and we're battling evolutionary psychology and like how our brains are wired and like all these things. Like it makes it really, really hard to remember and to live by and do the things that you talk about in your book. So, with all that said, as kind of a springboard, let's dive on in, and we may not have time to get to all the core values, but like
Sure.
let's pick off a few and talk about like some of what you think are most vital.
Sure. Well, I'll name the five and then we can dig in, but they are love, gratitude, integrity, accountability, and endeavor. And they're the five that I chose, but I really intentionally spent a lot of time thinking about, I want these values. I think the values that I talk about to my kids and maybe to other people should be apolitical, independent of religion, and really independent of time, because so much of what we talk about on a day-to-day basis is we're in unprecedented times. That was the favorite word
Yeah,
during COVID was this is unprecedented. Well, most things have happened not exactly like this, but trials very similar to what we deal with today have happened in the past. And so much
yeah,
has come from people sitting down and thinking about what is important during those times that, like you said, I didn't write anything new down. All I really did was consolidate what I feel like are the most important things. And so love, gratitude, integrity, accountability, and endeavor to me help us to become our best selves if we really strive for those, no matter what our career is. It could be very highly technical and it could be, not at all technical, but these values are important. And then I also really feel like they're important in every situation that we're in or every role that we play. So I talk a little bit in the book about, as a person in relationships, as a parent, at work, and then as a leader, here's how to try to live these values out. Because sometimes in leadership, and I know you talk about this a lot in your podcast, we get so focused on our goals as a team or our goals as an organization that we forget that who we are still matters more because
mhm,
that's really what drives the success and then the personal fulfillment and everything else. So that's really what I got down to in the book and what the values are.
yeah. I love that. Well, and let's dive right on in with love, starting things off because I agree. I think that's foundational, and it seems so absent in so many examples of leaders that we see out there. Um, and it kind of blows my mind. Not because I don't know why. I mean, it's obviously it's not a new thought that
Right,
leaders should care. They should
right,
have empathy. They should, we're not talking about romantic love here. We're talking about
right.
selflessness. We're talking
Hmm.
about lifting up and building up others. And all of that, like that is the hallmark of a great leader. And I think pretty much everyone knows that.
Right,
And most leaders would say that. Yet, when we find ourselves in organizational contexts, especially really hard, challenging circumstances, that love is so often not observable.
hmm,
It's not recognizable, and
right,
in some cases, the opposite is true, and we just see fear and hatred and negativity and all of these things that are not helpful. They don't bring out the best in people, and they do not help us get to where we want to go. And so, yeah, on the one hand, I'm like it's so obvious. It makes perfect sense. Everyone should just know that, like, to be a great leader, this is what we need to strive for
right.
and yet, we have pressures for quarterly earnings reports, and we have like all these
Exactly.
different things that then end up pushing us in different directions that may even be completely counter to what we want and how we
Right,
lead.
right. Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's so we are so dependent on the circumstance. We're so driven by what we want, what other people can give us, or how other people act, or what the situation is. And that's why I think unconditionality is so critical. It's really a mindset. It's going into every situation with the mindset that I'm dealing with a human being or a group of human
Hmm.
beings. They're the same as I am, in the really fundamental ways that matter they're the same as I am. They live on the same planet, and therefore they deserve the same respect, kindness, and compassion, which are the three main factors that I talk about in the book. Respect, kindness, and compassion, no matter who they are and no matter what the situation is. And I think with that as the mindset, which, as you said, is very hard to maintain in every situation, but really thinking about, I'm going to go into this situation trying to keep in mind respect, kindness, and compassion for the people, and then deal with the situation as it comes. I think we're going to be better situated to not only, treat people right, but also achieve outcomes that are beneficial to us, to our team, to our organization, and to the organizations that we deal with. Yeah, we may not, if we're not selfish, we may not get everything we want, but I think in the long run, we still achieve more because people will come back. They want to work with us. Hey, I enjoyed working with that person, with that company because they were respectful. They had respect for my opinion, my perspective. Maybe they didn't agree with me, but they still treated me with respect and
Yeah.
kindness and compassion. And I think those things over time win out and also help us become better people.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we continue to talk about these values, let's do this in relation to Bezos and Musk.
Mhm.
As I kind of framed up at the beginning of the episode. So you have these direct competitors in the aerospace industry, and these are not small competitors, right?
Right.
These are like mega organizations, billionaires, the richest. I don't know what the current standings are, but they're at least two of the top five richest people in the world
Right.
as currently stands, maybe the top two. I'm not sure.
Right.
Anyways, they're ridiculously resourced. They can do kind of whatever they want, all sorts of influence and power and money and all the things, right? And so you find yourself competing against that, trying to hold true to these core values.
Mhm.
Um, where did you feel like there's at times a rub, like a tension there, in trying to have the outcomes while continuing to uphold the values? Were there times where you can see a stark contrast between what you're trying to do and what you see happening in these other companies? Let's talk
Mhm.
about that a little bit.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I think is helpful about competing against companies that, seem like they're so much more advantaged than we are is that it kind of forces you to ignore what they're doing because you can't compete, right?
Mm,
You're not going to be able to bring as many dollars to the table. So you kind of ignore that part of it and just focus on what's the best we can do. How can
yeah,
we bring the best design, the most benefit to NASA in this case, the best opportunities for astronauts and so forth. So those are the things we really focused on. I've told people that it was kind of nice to be such an underdog. When
mm,
we were among the three chosen to compete, and everybody knew who the other two were, and they said, okay, who's this third entity? Who are they, and what are they about? It naturally, I think, gave us underdog status, but also a little bit of freedom to make mistakes or freedom to do things differently. And so, that allowed us to maybe be more creative. We knew we had to be creative in order to stay in the game. And then it really obviously builds some camaraderie, some, everybody's fighting the man, so to speak.
right, yeah,
So it made everybody really excited about the opportunity. Ultimately we lost, and that's devastating. But the activity itself was so, the purpose was exciting, but then the team activity, the camaraderie, the morale, the working together, depending on each other, and it really did require, I mean, from a leadership perspective, it did require empowering the people on the team to do what they do best, and to come up with the best possible solution. So it was a lesson for a lot of us, in just focus on doing what you do for the team and then working together. Obviously, something like a lunar lander for people to go to the moon is extremely complex and very interrelated. Everything affects everything else in that kind of a
Mhm.
system. So it requires constant communication and constant um, system thinking so that, hey, I'm not just going to design my widget based on what I think is important, but it's also what's it going to do for the system and how is are my changes going to affect other people in the system. So there was a ton of that kind of interplay and interaction communication, which which led to great collaboration and just a really great experience for everybody on the team.
Yeah, well, I love the outcomes of collaboration, with, enhanced creativity and innovation that comes because people feel fully empowered.
Hmm.
They have the runway,
Hmm.
to do cool stuff, right? And
Right,
you really have no other, as you said, you have no other choice.
right,
If you're trying to control everything, as the leader, especially in that kind of environment, I mean,
right.
you're so toast right out of the gate.
Hmm.
And so you have good people around you. They have their expertise. You have to lean on them. You have to empower them. And I don't know if you want to go there. I'm happy to go there. But like when I look at someone like Musk, um, that is not something I see in his approach and how he runs his companies, how he interacts with his people. I do not see this love component, the compassion, the respect, the dignity that you're talking about.
Hmm.
He's clearly a brilliant person. He clearly has all the resources, and those can drive lots of outcomes, right? But if you were to take the same person without all those resources, I just don't see it. I don't see how he could possibly get much of anything done because the emotional intelligence piece isn't there from what I can see, and that certainly that love and that compassion and that respect piece does not seem very evident from what I've seen, publicly either. And so, man, with drive and initiative and intelligence, you can get a lot done. You can do a lot of
Hmm.
things, and clearly he has. But you know, when it comes to like getting things done with people,
Hmm.
um, I don't know. Like I have a hard time seeing it. And so I don't know. As we talk about love as we have, but even get into some of these other values, it's just a reminder to me, like we can't take these things for granted. You know, maybe someday magically it's I'm destined to be filthy rich like Musk, and then I can accomplish anything I want to do because of my resources. But for like 99.9% of us, that's not ever going to be reality. And so we need to accomplish things with others through
Right.
people, you right?
Yeah.
And not only is that the best way, from a utility standpoint, like to actually get stuff done, but it's
Hmm.
also the fulfilling way. It's the way I
Exactly.
find the way I find meaning and purpose, the way I you develop and build those relationships, and even though your project is over and you lost, you learned and you grew with these people, and these are people that
Exactly.
you're probably going to have connection with for a long, long time, and
Yeah.
may work on projects with again in the future. And
Yeah.
and there's so much value there.
Yeah, I agree. And you hit on the right things. Personal fulfillment, it's hard for us in the working world. We work at least 40 hours a week, and we usually think about it, 90% of the time that we're awake, we're thinking about our job. But truthfully, our lives are so much more than that. Our
Yeah.
families, critically, the people in our community, you know, other organizations, church, uh, professional organizations, personal endeavors, all those things are part of our lives. And as you said, that the how we live in all those situations, including work, is really what brings fulfillment. when I kind of stepped back from this project where it was such a great project, enjoyed it. I mean, we lost, but when I stepped back and realized all the great that came from it in terms of friendships and learning personally about leadership and how to work well with others, but also knowing that all the people on the team had such a great experience. They've gone to other places. Some of them stayed at the company, but some of them went to work for a SpaceX or a Blue Origin and other places. But they always come back and say, we loved that experience. If we could get that kind of experience again, working with those people, we would take it in a hot second because it was so fulfilling personally and from a career perspective for every one of us. And that to me, I say this in the book, is more important than whether we won or not.
Mm.
Yeah, of course we would have loved to have won, but somebody's eventually going to take people to the moon. It'd be great if it were us, but it wasn't. That doesn't matter as much as am I the kind of person who I need to be to my kids, to my wife, to the people I interact with. And so that's really what I think I've realized after stepping back and thinking and writing about this is that's really what matters. The other things they look like they matter on a day-to-day basis because we're spending so much time thinking about them and involved in them. But when you step back, you realize what matters more is who I am to
Mm.
myself, to the people around me. And one of the things I love about space is, you get to, if you send people or robots to space, they look down at the planet from a perspective that we can't get. And
Yeah.
there's something called the overview effect that other folks have written about that astronauts change their perspective about the planet, about their time on the planet by looking at the planet from the moon or just from orbit and saying, wow, there are no borders from space, right? The problems that we have on Earth are they seem completely different from the perspective of space. And that big picture view of what's really important is really valuable. So I think that's what I've tried to keep in mind is, other companies are going to behave and operate the way they operate, and they may be successful in the way the world sees success, but I want where I am and what I do to
Yeah.
be successful in what matters as a person and as interacting with other people.
I love it. I love it. Well, Andy, this has just been a really great conversation. We've only scratched the surface, but thank goodness you have a whole
Yeah.
book that people can check out to learn more. As we wrap things up and I let you get on with your busy day, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, where they can find your book, and then give us the final word.
Thank you very much. You can find me at andycrockerbooks.com. That's the website, and it'll take you to the book and give you a little bit of information about me. Feel free to reach out by LinkedIn, just Andy Crocker or Facebook or Instagram. But look me up on andycrockerbooks.com and go from there.
Wonderful. Andy, thanks again. It's just been a really wonderful pleasure to sit down with you and to talk about these important topics. I encourage the audience to reach out, to get connected, find out more about what Andy can do for you. Check out the book. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.